Hello, and welcome to the Daily View, and welcome to Venus Friday. And Venus is always traditionally associated with Friday. It's the fifth day of the week, and Venus is associated with the five-pointed star. I think it's rather common knowledge, but it's worth repeating that uh, there was a real change in consciousness in Mediterranean society about 4,000 years ago, and basically that transformation in the consciousness had to do with the roles of the male and the female. Uh, Men not being the brightest of creatures, took a very long time to figure out how women became pregnant. And the matriarchy ruled and ruled for a very long time. It's one of my favorite comments is that the matriarchy was written out of history by Homer, who was the chief propagandist for the new rise of the patriarchy, and this was symbolized by the relationship between Ulysses and his wife uh, Penelope. She was queen, and as queen, she had husbands that were selected uh, that were her consorts for 1 year. And at the end of that 1 year, they were ritually butchered and cooked and served at a festival. And then the next husband would, be her partner for a year. This was the power of the matriarchy. And then came Ulysses. And just before it was time for that festival chopping, gee, sorry, honey, I have to go off to war. And he went away for a very long time. And she could not remarry because he had not been killed. And he refused to be killed. And that symbolically ended up being the end of when he returned and killed all the suitors. It ended up, demolishing the power of the female and the female goddesses that were associated with the female spirit. And it began a counter revolution. That is, it began a process of deconstructing and rewriting the mythology of the time. No longer were the female gods given the great power. Their powers were diminished. And no greater example is that of Venus. And it's one in which it's a common example that I use because it shows the distortion if one is only aligned to one particular cultural appraisal. Venus was transformed, particularly by the Romans, and the mythology of Venus as a goddess of love. And if you ask most people to describe to you the archetype of Venus, they're not very far away from, the boudoir. The fact of the matter is that Friday is a day for, um, punishment by death in certain countries on the planet still today. Venus's day. It is well documented that in the South American Mayan cultures, that Venus was the star of execution, that ritual executions would take place when she would rise in the sky. Her name was the Eye. Um, it's something to keep in mind about the nature of Venus. Venus is very, very powerful and deeply misunderstood. And at the very core of Venus in your design is the essence or the key of what Venus represents as an imprint. That is, it brings morality, mores. Where Jupiter operates with a very generalized law, Venus is dealing with natural law, the natural way in which we deal with the other and with the consequences of the world around us. And Venus is in charge of our moral stance. Now, to see the moral questions that lie there in your life, the moral dilemma of this and that, the moral dilemma of what is right and what is wrong, the moral dilemma of what disturbs you at the moral level in your relationship with this or that, that all you need to do is look at the activations of Venus in your design. You know, you look at your personality Venus, and when you're looking at the position of that person, that activation of your personality Venus, you're looking at that gate and you're looking at that line, is that what you're dealing with is the basic moral dilemma that you're going to work with as a personality in your life, the right and the wrong for you. And that the whole thing about the nature of Venus is that here is a place where if you do not, if you do not act with moral clarity, those around you do not act with moral clarity. This is a Venus that can be very nasty in its retribution. An interesting thing to ponder about the goddess of love